Evil Dead Rise is a 2023 horror film and a co-production between the US, New Zealand, and Ireland. It stars Alyssa Sutherland, Sullivan, Morgan Davies, Gabrielle, Echols, and Nell. The plot follows a struggling single mom and her sister fighting to save her kids from deadites after the Necronomicon is once again unearthed. So the other day I decided to maybe start, working on an Evil Dead ranking video or something like that, when I realized I never really did give this like a proper movie review. I mean, I have talked about it on this channel numerous times, but after watching it recently, I guess the time for a review is now. So here we go. The Evil Dead franchise is one of my favorite horror franchises, maybe even my favorite. It's just one that I hold really close to my chest, and I am fine for the most part with more movies being made, especially as long as Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell are involved. So going into the beginning of this movie, I'll just say now is honestly kind of confusing, and I'm really not a fan of this beginning. You see characters doing the whole deadite possession thing with people that aren't the main characters or anything like that. So it's a wraparound story. It's ambitious, I guess, but also kind of pointless in my opinion. Sorry, Lee Cronin, I just hated it, and I don't really know what you were thinking. After that, we get into the actual story that matters, and we're introduced to Beth, played by Lily Sullivan, and she's basically this movie's Bruce Campbell, in a way. And I should specify, none of the post-Ash Evil Dead movies try to actually replicate Bruce Campbell's character, which is the smartest possible move. So Beth finds out that she's pregnant with help from the father being probably super unlikely, so she drops everything to head to LA to stay with her sister and her kids for support. They live in this massive, super old high-rise building, which becomes the setting for the rest of the runtime. So that makes this the first Evil Dead movie to not take place in the woods. Don't get me wrong, Evil Dead stories obviously work so well in the woods. we all agree on that, but I do think that doing something different here was necessary. That said, I don't really think the high-rise building was properly utilized at all. Just way too much of the runtime is spent inside just the family's apartment. It's like a decent-sized apartment, but still. So the kids end up finding some old artifacts under the building, which Danny takes some old vinyl records and a creepy book, the Necronomicon, of course. The book is obviously in every Evil Dead movie, because it is the catalyst and all that. It looks different every time, but in my opinion, always looks cool. I feel a bit different about the records, though, although I definitely prefer the reel-to-reel. And I get that Lee Cronin wanted to modernize things, or at least, put his own spin on it, and that's totally fine. But with Evil Dead, I feel like it's okay to repeat some things. So, the kids return home, Danny plays the records and opens the Necronomicon, and Ellie is possessed and turned into a deadite. In a scene where Lee Cronin kind of recreates the possession, scene from the original Evil Dead, with Ellie being trapped in her building's elevator. So instead of tree branches and stuff like that, it's electrical wires and stuff. It's a pretty cool scene, actually. And from this point on, it's, total deadite chaos, of course. What else would it be? What else would you want? With other characters, eventually becoming possessed too, since that's how it always works. There's even a scene where multiple deadites, and this is something totally new, multiple deadites form one giant deadite, like a bloody, fleshy Voltron. And it's cool. I for some reason liked it much more on this most recent rewatch. Probably because I'm sort of an Evil Dead purist in a way. I think the first time I saw it, I did think it was cool because it is cool, but I kind of rejected it for some reason. This movie was much harder for me to get into compared even to the Fede Alvarez reboot. So, like I said, probably 95% of this movie takes place in the apartment building. And it's cool. It's a cool looking building, but it just made the set feel kind of small because they just mostly stay in the family's apartment, or the hallway in front of it, and that kind of annoyed me. It's also way too dark at times, which also annoyed me. The characters themselves were okay, I guess. I thought the kids were kind of annoying, and I just don't think a good Evil Dead movie needs kids at all. They shouldn't even be there. I mean, I loved the Fede Alvarez Evil Dead, and those characters were pretty lackluster, but the crazy amounts of gore and stuff like that really saved it, really elevated it. Between this and Lee Cronin's Mummy film, I think I just don't really like how he writes his characters and dialogue. Honestly, for a good director that writes good characters and good, organic-sounding dialogue, check out Curry Barker's Obsession. That's how it should be done. So I think this is overall a really good looking movie, but again, way too dark at points in that fucking building. And I could probably do without, the Evil Dead callbacks. You get the shotgun, the chainsaw, and, the classic Bruce Campbell come get some line, which I just didn't need. The gore looks great though, and there's tons and tons of blood, but overall, it's not as mean spirited as the Alvarez film, which I did kind of miss. So I'm giving Evil Dead Rise 2.5 out of 4 stars. It's a cool movie, but this being my favorite horror franchise, it does fall just a little bit short for me. Cheers, guys, and I'll see you at the multiplex.
Subscribe right now, please.